Hello, I'm Toycat, and I'll be honest, this is one that hits a little close to home. Zipcar, the world's biggest car sharing company, is going to close its UK operation permanently. That means that the idea of a communally owned car, a car that anyone can rent for £6 to £10 an hour, everything included, fuel tax, insurance, etc., all of that stuff is going to go away, and the idea of not being able to own a car in London is going to get harder. Because to be clear, they're talking about their UK operations, but they already ended all of their other UK operations in Oxford, Cambridge, and Bristol last year. And so this is the end of the concept. What does that mean for the concept of transportation, especially in big cities? Why is Zipcar going under? And kind of the interesting question here is electrification to blame? Because weirdly, the answer is yes, and it shows us the weird tax incentives that really work against, for and against different people, and how the government gets to set the rules and this sort of thing. But let's start with the simplest thing. Why did Zipcar say they went down? So Zipcar is owned by Avis Budget. Renting cars, by the way, one of the biggest businesses out there. It's like property. You buy something that costs you maybe 30 grand, and then you get to rent it out for like £100 a day. And so within a year, if you get very lucky, you can pay off that car, and then you still have a car that's worth most of its original price. Car rental agencies get super big discounts when they buy cars. They're able to sell cars for above their value because they have so many. They get this really, really huge efficiency of operation. And so why is it that Zipcar's not making money? Well, actually, they've just said they'll suspend bookings pending the outcome of a consultation with their staff members, but they were very clear that they're looking to streamline operations, improve returns, and position the company for long-term sustainability and growth. In other words, they said they'd like to make money because last year their revenues fell to 47 million while their after-tax losses widened to 11.6. For every £4 they had in costs, in revenue rather, in earnings from individuals, they had £5 in costs, and they're not the government, and so eventually that loss has to be stemmed by someone, and so as a result, you can't do this anymore. In theory, they could raise the price of Zipcars by, a certain percentage, but then fewer people might book them, and in theory, they could do what Enterprise Car Club, the only competing alternative, does, which is charge you a membership fee. This basically says if you want to use an Enterprise car, you are paying for its existence whether you use it or not. There is a £7 a month fee if you want the decent, situation right here, but you're paying that £7 a month fee whether or not you drive a car. And I remember thinking oh man, I just paid £7 a month and I don't even get to drive this car, because back when in some areas, Enterprise Car Club does have better service, like Watford, or if you live in Welwyn Garden City, having access to 2 cars is probably as many as you need. Many people there are going to drive their own cars, and so to be able to get a car for, how much is this one going to be? Let's find out. To be able to get a car for £6 an hour plus £7 a month actually is a far better deal if you're just using it for an IKEA or a Costco run or whatever else the case may be. And so that is the value of these systems, and that is the alternative that we're going to be stuck with. But yeah, Zipcar is basically saying that they are done with the concept. They don't think they can make money, which is a very bold thing, and is why we have to dive deeper into what they've actually said. So this was something that came out earlier this year, where they basically said that car clubs are being priced out of offering electric vehicles. It's absolutely fascinating, actually, because this is the founder of Co-Wheels, a different company here, but they're backed up by Enterprise Car Club. But basically, EV owners pay as little. The concept of an electric car is meant to be you pay more. You pay away. Electric cars cost more than petrol cars brand new, but then your running costs go down a lot. Part of this is due to tax incentives, but a lot of this is due to the fact that you get domestically charging. But if we look into this deeper, you can see that, even though you pay less, even though you pay more for the car, you actually pay more for electricity than you would for petrol, because whereas at home, you pay 7p per kilowatt with only a 5% VAT rate, because domestic electricity pays less VAT. If you are charging a car publicly, which is what car clubs need to do because they're on the street, just to show you right here, this is where your Zipcar needs to be. Anyway, so because they can't charge at home, they have to pay 20% VAT, and then they also pay about 10 times the price for electricity. This is something I think everyone is realizing, and this is something that I think is the real divide between electric and petrol. If you want an electric car now, it's not based on, it's not based on whether you want to save the environment or whether you like one more than the other. It's entirely based on whether you can charge it at home, where you can pay 5% VAT as opposed to, petrol, where you pay 20% VAT plus whatever number of pence it is. There is a huge tax incentive, but only if you can charge your electric car at home. This means that if you're a business, or even if you're an individual, this same thing doesn't apply. There is a really interesting divide appearing in electric cars, which is to say, if you own a cheaper car, I mean, a cheaper house. So this is a fact, right? If you live in a house that is detached, which is the sort of house that can have electric car charging out the front and a driveway for you to charge up on, maybe semi-detached as well. But if you own the most expensive properties, you benefit from the cheapest running costs on your car. But if you have a terraced house, you can't charge your car at home without running one of those weird cables, or you can't legally charge your car at home, and especially if you're in a flat, the same is true, which means that the cheaper your house, the more you have to pay for transportation. We've accidentally inverted the economy in terms of progressiveness in that one, and this is a very big deal that really hurts businesses as well, because businesses need to have a permanent premises, which car clubs do not. I think they could have just taken them to an Avis or whatever like office to charge them there, but even if they had done that, they would still be liable to a higher tax rate for businesses versus individuals. This is kind of the interesting case of how you can charge business. You can argue that businesses should be charged whatever they want, but the really important thing is the tax incidence. Who is actually paying that tax? Are the consumers paying the tax, or is the business paying that tax out of their profits? And the answer in Zipcar's case was neither. What happened was Zipcar was continually losing that money, and eventually they're saying, we are losing too much money, this is bad. In fact, if you look into it deeper, they say that one of the other big drivers, in fact, they're stopping their business the day before this goes ahead, is the fact that the congestion charge in London is about to apply to electric cars. Keep in mind their costs, their losses are already 11.7 million. They're about to have to pay a £13.50 daily charge on every single vehicle in their fleet. And again, you can't really pass this on to individual car users, because if my £6 an hour car goes up to £19.50 or even up to like £11, maybe I don't want to do that anymore. And so basically, you can see that this is the, you could really make a point about how taxes work. The ideal tax to most people, to the average voter, is a tax that gets something that, let's make a graph here. The ideal tax, this left axis can represent, how good a policy is to me, how much I benefit, and the right is how much I have to pay. So everyone hates taxes that are really, really bad for them, but they have to pay a bunch for. Like if I pay for a police officer to, punch me in the ribs because he thinks that I've done something illegal, that's me using my tax money to get a really bad outcome. Whereas if other people pay a bunch of money for my NHS and that saves my life, this is the sweet spot here, right? And so every tax you're trying to, if we ignore the spending part, if we just say the tax part, a tax that is only on shares of over £50 million being sold is a tax that will add to the public treasury, but I don't have to pay. Whereas a tax on, a tax on lobster rolls, but only for people whose name starts with an A and who have a YouTube channel about eccentric geography, that's a tax I have to pay exclusively, but doesn't give a lot of revenue to the treasury. So if you think about tax instances, this idea of how much do I have to pay versus how much money does it generate, and in the ideal world, all revenue, all taxes would raise a bunch of money for the government at no cost to me, and all the taxes I have to pay would be very, very, very low. But, making a sweet kind of line like this. But there's a lot of business taxes which will just be passed onto the consumer. This is interesting because it's the classic case of VAT. There's a 20% tax on everything you pay, and you could argue the business pays it, but also the business can just raise their prices 20%. And so, this is an example of a tax that hits the middle spot. But if you try to force a tax to be really good for you without any cost to you, then you eventually end up with businesses that are like, yeah, we can't pass this on because our consumers won't pay it, but also we can't pay it ourselves, and therefore the solution is to go bust. A lot of people, by the way, make a big point about how bad it is for the congestion charge to extend to electric vehicles, because isn't the congestion charge meant to be about improving air quality? No. The congestion charge is about reducing congestion. Paying to drive is actually quite logical in some parts of the city. If you've never seen just how congested parts of central London are, I can zoom in here right now and it's going to be like, oh yeah, that's not fun. Look how many cars there are backing up that bridge at a random time of day in July 2021. I just knew it would look this way. Central London has way too many people who would like to drive here relative to the number of people who can drive there by the thickness of the roads. Congestion charge is meant to say you're paying with the congestion. A lot of people mix it up with ULEZ, which is meant to be like improving air quality all the way in Greater London. But the point here is that, yeah, you can say that a tax is as just as you like, but without, some businesses will not be able to pay it. And so there's the ultimate question here that I think brings us back into this. Zipcar is a business I like, and so I might make the case that they should be paying less VAT on their electricity. They should be able to reclaim their VAT at least, or that maybe they shouldn't be paying congestion charge. But this is the weird thing about how businesses have to work. At some point you have to say, all businesses follow the same rules, and some businesses aren't going to be able to succeed on those rules, and so no matter how much we like the public good that is Zipcar, either we can subsidize the concept of rental cars, which maybe I think we should do. I think that the more people who have a car like this, even in places like Bishop's Stortford's railway station, but I think that having access to a public car makes fewer people likely to buy their own car. That has so many knock-on effects for good. I think that you should tax them less than a business that is maybe less good for the economy. I think betting shops should pay higher tax rates than public, like, I don't know, fruit shops. I think that in the same way that, cars that are, publicly rentable should pay lower tax rates than cars that are not, and they should pay maybe lower fuel rates or lower whatever rates. I think that this is an important thing, but then becomes the struggle, because if you don't have a system like that, if we have tax levels as high as we do in our current system, they represent about 40% of GDP right now. If you have tax levels as high as we do, then the only businesses that can succeed are the ones that are best at rinsing the consumers so that they can get their money to pay their taxes. If you think about it that way, in a world where we had no taxes and no government whatsoever, there'd be lots of businesses that would be able to just about get by, despite not being particularly good. Having a high barrier to entry, having, high costs, is good to a certain point, but at a certain stage, you can only, you can only have the most successful businesses exist. To give an interesting example of this, I'm gonna go onto Wikipedia right now. Let's ignore the list of ongoing armed conflicts. Let's go to a different one here. Okay, what we're gonna do is we're just gonna quickly search up Weatherspoons, and give you an example. People hate the way that Weatherspoons is ran. There is if you speak to people of a certain class in the UK, because it's a classism thing to a certain extent, people hate the fact that there is a place that you can get cheap beer and that other people can go and get cheap beer, but they are very good at making money. So their operating income is about 130 million. Their net income is 48 million, despite selling pints for the cheapest anywhere in the UK. You can have businesses like this, but all the unsavory things you don't like about their business need to be done. It's not a want to be done. It's not a can be done. It is that is your only choice at a certain point, is to run your business a little brutally, right? The McDonald's model. Is that how we want a society to work? It's an interesting question, and one I don't have an answer to. The only thing I do have to say, though, is that Zipcar's flex model is one of the coolest things in the UK, and it's going to go away. This is, so anywhere in these green areas, plus Heathrow Airport, and plus I think Gatwick Airport too. Oh no, they shut down Gatwick. So anywhere in these green areas, you can pick up a car and then drop it anywhere you like. It's Zipcars, but they're Lime bikes. I think it is the coolest thing. I used the Zipcar in a recent Andrew Andrews video to drive through the new Silvertown Tunnel, by the way. They did not understand who was paying for that charge, but it wasn't me. I forced Zipcar to pay some money, so I am responsible for their downfall. But more seriously, what's interesting is the fact that, being able to drive a car and just drop it off when you needed it, that was the future of transport, but clearly it wasn't. And that's where I want to kind of end this point, is that I think that there are lots of really cool ideas that can exist and that you might think will be the future. But the sad thing I'm learning as I'm getting older, I used to believe that self-driving cars were 3 or 4 years down the line, and so why would anyone bother getting a driving license unless you're an idiot who likes burning money? But 10 years have passed, and self-driving cars are, all it is it's lane assist plus, also cruise control. Self-driving is just not a thing that is here to stay yet. And so even though the idea of communally owned cars is also awesome, I think you need to have a better and different model for that to work. And that's sad. I don't like the idea that I pay for a car that sits there 90% of the time doing nothing but collecting dust. I don't like, there are some things that it's really nice to own. I'm glad that I own my house and I'm not renting it out to a family of mice while I'm gone. I'm really glad that I own my own Xbox controller and I don't have to rent this out. This is one that a friend gave to me and that I tried for years to give back, by the way, so now it's mine. But This actually is my rented controller. I picked the one thing on my desk that I'm holding in trust for someone that I'm desperately trying to give it back to. Maybe they're dead. If they're dead, have I stolen from their estate? Anyway, give me your legal advice in the comments down below. But yeah, the more important thing here is like, yeah, I love owning a controller. This is one I actually do own. I don't want someone to be using this when I'm not. There are lots of things like that, but I think that cars are one of the dumbest things to have like an emotional attachment to because they are such high expense, high space things. I mean, if you look at central London, right? If we look at the reason that this can't work is because if you look at how close people live together, even if you live in a £2 million apartment above you know, like Covent Garden, people are so close together that you just can't have every one of these people house. All 6 of those people are sharing one car spot. And so that car spot, wait, okay, it's disabled. Okay, there's all 6 of those people are sharing. Oh, there we go, car club. There we go. Look at this. Electric vehicles. Oh no, that's not a car club. But the point here, all of those people therefore have to get around by a bike. Look how much smaller the bike is. Or 1 in 6 of those people gets to own a car and the other 5 should feel resentful. Or only if you're disabled can you drive there. Or a car club is the solution to that, where all 6 of those people share one car. And sure, there are sometimes a year where it sucks, like Christmas, I think, all the cars get taken up as everyone from London goes back to the Shires. But I think that there is a fundamental problem in cities, which is that we have solved for workspaces and we have solved for you know, we've solved for living. You can live above the Bravissimo just fine. Look how nice a life this person has up here. But we haven't really solved it for transport. The London Underground is the biggest, you know, invention we have for making 3D transport. We still haven't really got there. We tried 3D roads for a bit. If you've ever seen how horrific these are, we tried 3D roads. Look at this. You can go up above the road, but also you can go down. Wait, this is where is this? Anyway, we tried 3D roads, and that was a fun concept, I guess. Very, very fun to have roads on roads on roads, but also people hate the way that looks. It's very cyberpunky, very dystopian future. 3D transportation is what we need, and in the meantime, one of the easiest ways to get it is what if one car was 6 cars? And that's what car sharing allows you to have. If everyone had access to a car sharing car all the time whenever they wanted it, and you could pay £6 an hour as opposed to a few £100s a month, it would be great, because most people don't drive more than 50 hours a month, and if they do, they could own their own car when they are in the minority, but we are not in that future, and that makes me a little bit sad. But that's the thing about growing older. Lots of things that you think are the future aren't, and lots of things you think aren't the future are. Have you seen how much gambling ads there are these days? It's great. Because, you know, if we live in a world where to make a bunch of money, if you want to be able to pay your taxes, you need to make a bunch of money, it makes sense that the companies that make the most money are going to be able to do that. Is that a good thing? I don't know. Is this a good thing? Oof. I certainly hope not. Anyway, with that said, thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. And second channel, don't care. This is why I think doing news videos fails for me. There are so many issues like this that are like so hyper niche. This is like, if you live in London, within these boroughs, because, you know, these boroughs are too... by the way, I got a parking fine for parking in this borough because I parked... I'm going to be continually mad about this. I parked here, chat. I parked in front of Goldfish, and I got £100 parking fine from the Camden Council, who said, yeah, if you were, and you know, if this were in the other borough, you would be fine. But because technically you're over the line by this amount, I am still angry to this day. You know what? Zipcar should go on. Just screw them. But yeah, if I make story, this is about specifically people who live in these boroughs and who don't own a car. Next, we'll be talking about my local convenience store closure. I'm just saying, this is the level of local we will get to. Thank you for watching. Hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Good. Bye. This is stupid.